Hello and welcome to Lighting the Way with Beth Green and friends. Friends will be coming on a bit later, but first on to our show. Tonight I'm going to be talking about immigration and more from a human perspective. I mean, obviously, there is a lot of uproar in our nation about how the government is using protests, immigration protests, in order to send the military into American cities, how they are actually gutting in some ways the economy of some blue states that are very reliant on immigrant labor. Um, and we see what's happening. But I don't want to focus on that tonight because there's a lot of focus on that, and people are already talking about that. I want to talk about a more of a human dimension and a little bit of a historic dimension and see if we can get a good conversation going. And I'm going to be speaking from the heart a lot. I don't think I have all the facts and figures to back up everything, but I have a lot of experience and observation and some historical information as well. So with that in mind, I would like to start out by reading you something very brief. It is the description for this show. And I'm going to put on my glasses. And it says, while we are focusing on the protests against mass deportation of immigrants, are we remembering to ask the important underlying questions? When looking for a nanny, a construction worker, or a day laborer, do we carefully examine their legal status? Well, of course not. That's a joke, right? Do we ask if the vegetables we are eating were picked by illegal immigrants? I I challenge you, wherever you are in the United States, are you asking that question? Are we aware of how historically business has taken advantage of, quote, illegal aliens? And have we looked at the economic contributions of immigrants? Have we considered how we are dehumanizing ourselves by our treatment of people who have been integrated in our society? Do we even know the legal status of our own parents, grandparents, and great grandparents, if they were immigrants? And finally, do we have firsthand experience with undocumented people? What was our experience? Let's talk about it. So, the name of the show, the title is Illegal Aliens or Valuable Human Beings. We are the people, who are the people we are terrorizing and deporting? So, hopefully, you find that an interesting topic. And let me get rid of this and move on to the chat, just in case anybody. We are simultaneously broadcasting on Facebook and YouTube. And if you are on my public Facebook page or you're on YouTube and you go into the live chat and you put a comment in, um, I will see it. If you're on my private Facebook page, I will not see it until later. So, I want to talk a little bit, I mean, very briefly, about the whole immigration question, issue, situation. I was born in New York City. I mean, everybody was an immigrant. We did not have a lot of Native Americans in New York City. And we had Jewish immigrants, of course. We had Italian immigrants. We had Irish immigrants. We had Mexican immigrants. We had Puerto Rican immigrants. We had, if I walked down the street, I would walk by a Greek restaurant, a Polish restaurant, a Jewish restaurant. I loved it. We all thought about it as, oh, great places to eat. That's the way we saw it. And when I moved to Cleveland, Ohio, and that was back in 1972, the city was full of Eastern European immigrants. I worked in a plastics factory with women from Poland. We got paid the worst wages because they were taking advantage of the powerlessness of immigrant women. $1.09 an hour, and let me tell you, that was not enough to live on even back in 1972. And there were all kinds of jokes about Polak jokes, right? And there have been slurs against immigrants of all types. Oh, and by the way, everybody would go to the Chinese restaurants in New York City. I mean, that was like, your neighborhood deli was a Chinese restaurant. I'm not going to I'm not going to tell you the word that was used to describe it. It was very insulting. And of course, when you come out to the West Coast, my God, you would think that you were, still in Mexico or Spain or somewhere. Well, after all, California was Mexico until the middle of the 19th century, when we defeated the Mexicans and stole their land, and so were other places in the American West, Southwest particularly. So it's not like all of a sudden we have immigrants. And the irony is, so many of the people back here on the West Coast are not immigrants. They come from families that were here before the the rest of the people came over. And everybody put their finger on it. New England. What, you think the people who were in New England didn't come from England? So we were all here. We were all struggling, and we always had the lowest paying jobs, which is what I was saying about the Polish women in the plastics factory. So, when you look at the labor that created so much of our agriculture and construction and so on, so many people are immigrants, especially Latinos and Latinas. So now, let's say you're living in Southern California and you need a nanny because you're a woman, you need to work, and you're not getting paid as much as some man. You need to hire somebody who's cheap. And where did you go? To an immigrant. If you needed a day laborer and you didn't have a lot of money, you'd go to a certain corner and you'd pick up an immigrant. Were they documented? Probably not. Mohammed's asking a question which I don't find relevant, but I'll say it. It says, thousands of immigrants have been granted American citizens. Should their American citizenship be revoked by the American administration, madam? Of course not. Anyway, my point is that people immigrate here from all over the world. Now, I want to add another piece to this. I hate to tell you if you don't know this, but a lot of the instability, particularly in Central America, comes from the United States meddling in their internal affairs. The United States has always had an outside impact on Central America and Latin America because of our corporations, our banana companies, and the US would definitely intervene militarily, even with Central American governments, if we didn't like them. I remember back, I think it was 1954, they threw out a democratically elected government that was, more into helping people, and that was in Guatemala. And it was then replaced, of course, by authoritarian governments. The US has done that in so many countries. They did it in Chile, we did it in Brazil. Throughout Latin America, we figured, well, they're in our sphere of influence, so we can do what we want. And we have contributed to the problems of those nations. I'm not saying they don't have their own internal corruption and their own poverty and so on, but it's really important, if you want to understand what is going on, wake up and read the books. There are still books. You can still find information on the internet. They haven't wiped it all out yet. They're trying. And we know that the United States, which has like 5% of the world's population, consumes 25% of the illicit drugs. 25% of the illicit drugs are consumed by us. So we're complaining about the cartels. Well, why are the cartels messing with us? Because they're selling us drugs that we're taking. I mean, I can't stand this. How we are so blind, how we are so ignorant, how we want to stay blind and ignorant to what is really happening in our world. And now climate change, which we and the other advanced nations have massively contributed to, is contributing to instability also of people not being able to make a living where they live. So I've been focusing a lot on Central America, but obviously immigrants come from all over the world. And our society and our economy have to a large extent been built on the backs of these immigrants because they had no power and they were the source of cheap labor. And, and what you want to call Black people immigrants? Well, they came from somewhere else, but not exactly voluntarily. So Mohammed says, even perhaps documented immigrants can be dangerous to America. Americans are dangerous to Americans, please. There's no evidence that immigrants cause any more crime. I don't know why you're asking these questions. Can you please address what I'm talking about? I'd really appreciate it. Listen to what I'm saying and address what I'm saying, please. So now, so many people in California and probably in other states. So I don't have the personal experience outside of New York and Cleveland, Ohio, and California, and even up here in Oregon. But people are very reliant on immigrants. I mean, when I say that women were always looking for nannies among the immigrant population, now why do you think that was? And they were also the housekeepers and still are, because they worked hard and were cheap labor. That's why. So after all of this, building an economy to a great extent on the backs of the poor, of immigrants, of slaves, we say, we're going to get rid of you. We're going to deport millions and millions of people, whether they're documented or they're undocumented. We'll take their documents away so that now, oh goody, now I have an excuse to get rid of them. And I mean, I am so upset because I know these people. I know these people. It makes me want to cry. They are so terrified. Horrible things are being done to immigrants, whether you're documented or you're undocumented. I mean, in this country, with this administration, they don't care what your status is. You may be 2 days away from getting your citizenship. They'll nab you and put you in a dungeon somewhere. The detention centers are overflowing. And why? Why are we doing all of this? Well, first of all, as I say, right now they're doing it in order to incite people to violence. And most people have not been incited to violence, but bringing in the National Guard illegally, if you ask me, or bringing in the Marines equally illegally, if not more illegally, all of this is, of course, going to incite people. They're already upset. How would you feel if you had to worry about your child being snatched away from school, or a child going to school worrying about their parent being snatched away while they're at school? How would you feel? How would you feel if your husband was, went to work in Home Depot and suddenly was nabbed by ICE? I mean, how would you feel if it was you? And people are terrified and are in pain, and there's so much trauma that is being inflicted on human beings for nothing. Because the other part of this is some gambit of the government to try to distract us from the big, beautiful bill where they're really screwing us completely by giving more breaks to the oligarchs, to the billionaires, to the millionaires, and taking away food stamps and Medicaid, and they're threatening Social Security from the rest of us. Now, we're not supposed to be looking at that because we're too busy watching one car being burned in LA over and over and over and over and over on television. And if people are getting more angry and throwing bottles and throwing eggs, whatever, do you blame them when they're being tear gassed for going out and peacefully protesting? So it's a nightmare, and it's so much political drama. It's like, oh yeah, see, I'm tough. I'm a tough guy. I'm going to get rid of that screaming woman whose husband has just been taken away or whose child has been taken away. Wow, that makes me a true man. And we never look at ourselves. We don't look at how much immigrant labor has contributed and what impact this is going to have on industry, on the agricultural industry, on a lot of industries, not just in California. But yeah, go after the blue states because that'll give you more and more license to arrest Democrats or to disrupt the economies. And yet, there are a lot of people who are angry and who are rising up, but there is so many people who say, "Oh well, but they don't have papers. They're not documented," right? As I say, how many tacos have you eaten? Are immigrants a burden on the Native Americans? No, immigrants are not a burden on the Native Americans. How many Native Americans do you know? There are no Native Americans except the Native Americans, which are few and far between, because we managed to kill them off or put them in something close to slavery from the time that the Spanish and the English and the Dutch came to the US. And in addition to that, the truth is that undocumented people pay taxes, generally speaking, are contributing to the economy, and they don't get Social Security and they don't get food stamps. Now, some get Medicaid, and there are specific provisions for why an undocumented person would get Medicaid, and it's under certain circumstances. So no, it's all distorted, and I feel just so upset. And personally, I just want to cry for the pain, the needless pain and suffering that this government is inflicting on human beings. And why aren't we focused more on the human beings and less on the political drama? Oh, I'm opposing Trump or I'm for Trump or whatever, but I'm also running for, president next year. So now, with all of that having been said, I'd like to introduce my friends who are going to be with us tonight. And let's see, first of all, we have Rebecca, who has been here once before, I think, on this show, right?
Yes.
Once before.
Yeah.
That is lovely, absolutely lovely. We're so happy to have you. Uh, nobody knows what I'm going to talk about until they get to the show. So we have Lizzie.
I think
And
you,
I
hi.
got
I
it.
think you need to shorten our screens. There you go. Great.
Yeah, I'm going to do that. I just had to get through this.
Great.
We have James. And
Hello, hello.
finally, we have Todd. Okay, well, thank you so
Hi.
much for joining me tonight. Okay, I've given enough of a lecture. And I want people to speak from the heart. I want to hear your experience. Have you had experiences with all these horrible, undocumented people who've been threatening you in the middle of the night? Now, I'm not saying that there aren't criminals, that there aren't violent people. But that's everywhere. That's everyone. So take it away. Who feels like sharing first? James.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that by branding these people illegal aliens, it automatically slants a person against them. It's like when
Right.
we've gone to war and we've called them pejorative names, we've dehumanized them. And when you dehumanize those people, then you give yourself an excuse not to treat them humanely or humanly. And so I think that's a big part of it. The government keeps putting out this propaganda that they're criminals, that they're illegal aliens, and they're not really entitled to be treated like regular people with due process rights. Even though the Constitution is not limited to due process for citizens, it says anybody residing in the United States is entitled to due process. But this government wants to ignore that and dehumanize and grab people, disappear them, send them off to detention camps or off to other countries. And it's very cruel. And I was very heartened when the new Pope came out very strongly saying, here we are, this country considers itself a Judeo-Christian culture. And the Pope says, what Trump is doing is not Christian. Jesus said, treat the least of you as you would treat me or as you would treat God. And this is not what we're doing. What we're doing is cruel and inhumane. And by the way, in terms of personal experience, we have landscapers who are immigrants, and they're the sweetest people, humble, sweet. We have housekeepers who come regularly. They're very sweet, very conscientious, hardworking. And this has been true wherever I have lived and wherever I've utilized day laborers, always very nice, very diligent, hardworking. What's the problem? There is no, this is a made up problem. These are human beings making a contribution. Most of the people who immigrated here as our ancestors didn't have to jump through the hoops that we're calling for people to jump through now. So why are we creating this problem and branding them in an inhumane name? Illegal aliens, they're not like us, etc. They are like us, just as human as any one of us.
Exactly, James. I completely agree with you. And the question I said, how is this impacting us? What are we becoming? I love the fact that you brought up that this is not Christian. We're supposed to be a Christian country. Well, really? Is that the way Christians are supposed to treat other people? I'm totally in agreement with you. And um, what it's doing is making us more callous, and it's feeding our worst qualities. And that's what this regime is doing. It's telling us that the most important thing is power, and we can treat people any way we want, and we just don't care. And that'll distract us from tariffs and all of the other problems we have. All right. Yes.
I'll share.
All right. Todd, and then Lizzie.
I love this. There's a lot to unpack here, but you brought up some really good questions. One about I know where my heritage comes from, from Britain, because I'm a Benton, but I don't really know how we came in, if we're legal, because at the time, I don't even know, in the 1800s, early 1800s, I think is when, anyway, it's very interesting to consider everyone's origins, and are we legal? What was the process then? You just walk in and they give you a stamp and you're done. I don't think there was all these hoops that we had to go through to become an American citizen when we came over in the 1700s, 1800s. I don't know the history, but it's a really good question. I'd like to speak to the personal experience that I've had, very similar to James. We have a gardener. He's from Guatemala. He's wonderful. He's like a little gnome. He's so sweet and caring and thoughtful and thorough, diligent, very hardworking. Same with our housekeeper. She comes every 2 weeks, and she's from Mexico, and similar. She just has such a buoyant spirit and always has a smile. I know she's going through things with her husband, his cancer. She rescheduled on Sunday. She came. I just can't imagine what she's going through, worrying about her husband getting deported while he's dealing with cancer here in the United States. that is it's so heart-wrenching, like you said. It just floors me that we're behaving in this such a callous and heartless manner towards these people. And you can't tell me that these billionaires like Trump hasn't had immigrants working in his properties and and he's never worked with anyone that's illegal. I mean, come on, that I don't buy that for a second.
God.
So that's what's so disheartening. But I also want to. I mean, you kind of raised the point about like how do we? I don't know what can we do about it, but maybe that's for later. So those are my experiences, and I want to give other people a chance to talk also. So.
Thank you, Todd. Well, Muhammad has been putting out say, I don't want to ignore it, but he said, give me a summary of what I've talked about. I really can't do that on the show. Just listen to the show. A conclusion. You're talking a lot about day laborer. This shows how sympathetic to the day laborers you are, madam. I am. Undocumented immigrants may be deported to their respective countries without a shade delay. I don't know what that means. But the point is, there's a reason that people have left those countries. I mean, my grandparents came from the Ukraine, one set, and the others came from Transylvania, which is Romania, Hungary. And they came because of the persecution of the Jews. I am so grateful that they didn't get deported back to their own countries. I would not exist. All the rest of my relatives were killed. As long as we can keep adding to the political and economic instability of countries of people who are coming here, we also have a hand in that, in creating the instability that's creating this crisis.
Yeah.
Anyway, go ahead. I think Lizzie was waving her hand next.
Yeah. Can you hear me? I'm not sure if I'm on.
Oh, yeah, you're doing great.
Any experience that I've had with people that were from other countries, whether Mexico or Guatemala or whatever, they've all been positive. Ditto, same thing to what Todd said, what James said. I've had housekeepers just caring. And they care about what they do. It's important to them. It's important to, I don't know what's going on in their lives, but it's like they're people. And right, they are here because who knows what's happened, but a lot of them have been persecuted. And I just feel so sickened by what this country is doing. And I talked to some people about it, and they're like, yeah, well, they're criminals, they're undocumented. I'm like, they didn't have any due process. That is illegal. That is unconstitutional. Why are we allowing that to happen? She's like, oh, that's a good point. And it's like, what news are you watching? Are they brainwashing you too? Because I feel that's what's happening. And it's just causing more division and just, people are people. We need to take care of each other because we all have blood. We all breathe. We all eat. We all excrete. I was going to say some other terms, but we all need the same things. We all need love. We all need support. We all need clean air, clean food, clean water. Why can't we just come together and meet these needs? Why do we have to keep feeding these oligarchies, these people that have so much power? They're so disconnected to themselves and each other. They can't feel this stuff. And if they do, are they going to be able to take the shame and the guilt when they take in what they've done?
If they ever do.
If they ever do. And I want to bring a positive point. I heard today, because, there's the No King March this Saturday.
Yes.
The Pope is having a mass for the world at the same time.
Yes. Yeah, that Trump is having his little birthday bash, showing off how much military power he has. Yes, it is so stupid. While they are brainwashing us and distracting us and giving lies, what is happening is the government is slowly but surely breaking the laws, defying the Constitution, and becoming more and more authoritarian. And we just sit there and say, "Well, yeah, but they're arresting illegal aliens." Okay, Mohammed says, "I have so far failed to catch the point of your conversation. Perhaps I cannot understand your language." I'm sorry, I really don't understand. Let me try to summarize it in one statement. The United States is built on immigrants and very few Native Americans, because however many there were died. Many massive numbers of Native Americans died when the Europeans came over to the United States, and they were immigrants. And everybody else is an immigrant. Even a slave is immigrated from somewhere else. And our economy has taken advantage of poor immigrants who don't have political power or don't have enough power to ask for higher wages, and we have exploited people. And the government is making it look like they're taking advantage of us, they're exploiting us. That's not true. And if we look at our own history, so many of us come from immigrant families, and that the government is using this in order to become more authoritarian and to destroy the opposition. And that's what we're doing. And I just hope and pray that on Saturday, when people do go to these protests, that we have enough common sense to not be violence, because the violence brings on the excuse for the increased authoritarianism. So if you want to help Trump be more authoritarian, go throw a rock. And if you want to stop it, be peaceful, be nonviolent, but tell the truth. Rebecca, would you like to share?
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to unmute myself. I have a personal experience. I had a coworker who was an undocumented citizen, and like you said, they try to paint this picture that they're exploiting, our system. But being around the same age as him and just hearing about the lack of opportunity and mobility that he has in this world honestly broke my heart. And again, like, such a nice guy, deserves the world, but just because of the system that we've set up, he'll never be able to have even the same opportunities as the rest of us. So it's a very interesting conversation. He no longer works with us, but I've been thinking about him and his family a lot during this time, just because I can't imagine. Even outside of that, just couldn't imagine being a part of a system that's so stacked against you and just kind of being stuck in a pigeonhole. It feels very antiquated. It feels like a caste system almost.
Yes, that's absolutely true. And if we think about it, that's good that you're thinking about the real life of this person, and think about how terrified all immigrants are now, especially if you have a dark colored skin. And that is just wrong. And some of us, our families immigrated here a long time ago. And some of us, it was just yesterday. And it could be us. My mother probably had birthright citizenship, which they're trying to eliminate. So we should know better. And we shouldn't be allowing ourselves to be brainwashed by this autocratic, mean-spirited, greedy class of people who have used who do you think is taking care of their homes? Who's cleaning their houses? Who's taking care of their children? I would bet you, if you look at these oligarchs, they've got lots of immigrant labor, and I bet they don't ask them whether they're documented or not. Okay, so Muhammad says, I wish I could be one of the immigrants to meet you there in America. Well, right now, I don't think you would want to. It's very, very scary to be an immigrant in America. And I would like to just mention one more thing. There's someone who works for us who is documented, has all her papers. She's terrified. She's terrified because it doesn't make any difference. They're revoking rights and privileges that people have been granted legally. She's terrified, and she was just crying the other day. And like you said, it's breaking my heart. So we have to be strong. We have to remain sane. We have to educate ourselves, and we need to keep protesting, but we need to do it in a way that doesn't allow them to justify coming up with more force against everyone. And we need to go to the ballot box as soon as we can. And we have to protect our votes because I'm not sure that they're going to let us vote. And we need to do everything we can to protect our democracy. But we have to speak up and not be afraid. Does anyone else have anything that you would like to say now? I would like to offer, would you please like or love our show on Facebook? Would you please give it a thumbs up on YouTube? Please leave comments later. If you were offended, I don't care. It's okay with me. Say whatever you want. I will respond if you're polite. Yes, James.
There's one more point I'd like to bring in here, and that is Trump himself has been documented as having a lot of undocumented workers in his Mar-a-Lago estate and hotel and resort.
Exactly.
So we know that he's just using this as a means to justify having more and more power and authority, create an authoritarian government.
There's been some questions about how did Melania get here? How she's an immigrant. His father is a immigrant, isn't it? Elon Musk, his best buddy, is an immigrant. But obviously, immigrants are bad. I think if you start looking at those, I would agree with you. So immigrants are those immigrants. I mean, immigrants are innocent, some good, some bad. So please follow us on Facebook on my public page at Granny Rocks On. Facebook.com/Granny Rocks On. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and click the notification button. And please like or love the show or give us the thumbs up. And please tell people about this program. If you're feeling the same kind of feelings we are, then let people hear what we have to say, because I think that I'm hoping that I brought in a little bit larger perspective rather than just saying, oh my God, these raids are happening, ISIS raids. Well, wait a minute. There's history behind all of this. There's economics behind all of this. We need to understand what's really going on, and we need to try to return to some sort of humanity. So thank you so much for joining us tonight and later. And I'll see you next week, Wednesday at 6:30 p.m., Lighting the Way with Beth Green and friends. And the next thing is tomorrow night, we are going to do magical improvs, we hope, where James and I are going to play music, and that's Thursdays at 7 p.m. Okay. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you for being with us.
Bye.